Is Khalil Mack really on the trade market right now, Ian?
He is being asked about. I know that, and that's actually been going on for probably 4 weeks. But it's interesting because I think media a lot of times gets criticized for making things into too big of a deal. Like I think the media is making too big of a deal of Teddy Bridgewater's trade market, for instance. But what teams do is when they see, okay, a guy is potentially on the block, player's unhappy, he's great, we might want him on our team, they call based on a lot of times what they read in the media. So as soon as Khalil Mack wasn't showing up, everybody started calling the Raiders. And I've got no indication that the Raiders would even consider a trade. I'm not saying it's like impossible. I'm just saying when they've talked to teams, they have given the impression that that is not something we would even entertain. And, if you think about it, it would be very hard for this to happen because obviously he's worth a first-round pick and more. So let's say you give up that. Then you also pay him $21 or $22 million a year, and that is hefty. And is that really the most efficient way to handle your resources if you're a team? I think that's probably the biggest question.
So why aren't the Raiders paying Mack and the Rams paying Aaron Donald? Is this a related issue, Ian?
Well, I think the Rams are working on it with Aaron Donald. And, I don't know when it's going to get done, but they have been working for some time. I think everybody appears to be sort of going in the same direction. And there is, some positivity and some optimism there that it gets done. So I would not be surprised if Aaron Donald happens before the regular season. As far as Khalil Mack goes, he could do his own deal. It's not like he needs to wait for Aaron Donald. It might be easier if Donald sets the template. But I think the other thing with the Raiders is they would like to, just from the Raiders' perspective, they'd like to see him. They'd like to meet him. They'd like to have him meet the coaches and see what he's like in their schemes. I think there's sort of an assumption like he's a great player, so he's going to get handed a check for, $21 million or whatever it is per year, and he probably deserves it. But the other side of the coin is the Raiders would like to know what they are paying for, and it's an entirely, completely new regime.
What is happening there? Ian, what is happening there? How did it go so south? How has it gone so far apart? There's a Monday Night Football game between the Rams and the Raiders that is being played 2 weeks from right now, Ian.
Yeah, I think what happened was there were discussions earlier this offseason. Mack showed up last year, was a good soldier, and then there were discussions earlier this offseason, and my understanding is they were so far apart that it just did not make sense to sort of continue negotiating. And, at this point, there is no current offer on the table. There have not been recent discussions at all. And I know there was sort of a lot made of the fact that John Gruden hasn't talked to him. If you're Khalil Mack, what's there to say? It's either put your, use the contract offer to state whatever you want to say, or what are we talking about?
Ian Rapoport here on the Rich Eisen Show. So one more item on this is what is the issue here? I know obviously money, but is it a percentage of what these players are making compared to what elite quarterbacks are making and what Von Miller came in at a couple of years ago? Just take me through the nuts and bolts. I've got Tom Condon in hour two, but these are not his clients.
No, although I'm sure he would have some fascinating insight. I think he probably has done a couple multi-million-dollar deals similar to this. Some of it does work off. Some of it does work off Von Miller, and I would imagine that any Aaron Donald big time extension that could be coming would be basically working off the Von Miller deal plus adjusted for what the recent cap is. And all of these deals sort of assume that the player is the best player, highest paid player at the position. Easy assumption to make with Donald. I believe the Raiders there with Mack, but again, it's just money that counts, nothing else.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.